you come to me and you say, Don Corleone, give me justice. But you don't ask for respect. You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather. Instead, you come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married and you ask me to do murder. Money. Buonasera. Buonasera. What have I ever done to make you treat me so disrespectfully? If you'd come to me in friendship, then the scum that ruined your daughter would be suffering this very day. And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then he would become my enemies. And then they would fear you.
I mean, Marlon Brando was an extraordinary person to work with, but it was magical. It wasn't, you didn't talk acting stuff with him. He'd come in and go, and that meant, where's the shot? And I would work with him through props. I would put little salami out, or I would take a cat and just but not words. I would never talk about acting stuff. He would hate it if I talked about, kind of acting talk. But I always worked with props and, kind of offered him things that might help him in his, but he was a man of incredible intelligence, aside from acting, just as a human being, what he was interested in, what he talked about, what he observed. He was pretty remarkable. The studio didn't want Brando. And no, I was told by the president of Paramount Pictures, Francis, Marlon Brando will not appear in this movie, and I forbid you, as president of Paramount, to bring his name up again. And at which time I fell on the floor in a faint, and I I did it deliberately, and they said, what? I said, well, if I can't even talk about it, then what kind of director am I? He said, okay, you can talk about it. And then they said to me, finally, okay, we give you 3 conditions for Brando. 1, he does the film for free. 2, he does a screen test. And 3, he puts up $1 million bond, so if any misbehaving on the set happens, he is underwritten. I said, I accept. So that's what I had. I had that he had to do it for nothing. He had to do a screen test. How was I going to get Marlon Brando to do a screen test? And he had to put up a bond. So I talked to Brando. I didn't know Brando, but I think he was pretty down and out. He had been in a film called Queimada, Burn, by Pontecorvo, who made the great Battle of Algiers. And he was so not in favor that they really thought that if he were in the movie, it would be worse than if an unknown were in the movie. So with Brando, I talked to him knowing he was an actor. I said, you're playing an Italian. Maybe you would like to fool around a little and improvise some things to see if you could get the essence of an Italian. He was only 47 years old, and the character Godfather is in his 60s. So he, on the phone, I think he said yes, he would do that. And I made a date with him to go to his house and shoot a little, and do a little improvisation. So I got there very early with 2 or 3 of my friends from San Francisco, and they were like ninjas. I said, Marlon Brando does not like loud noise. I had heard that. He wears even earplugs. And so I want no one to make noise. We're going to go there and we'll do hand signals like ninja, set up the camera, and be ready for him. So we went to his house there on Mulholland Drive, and it was early. He wasn't up. The maid was there with this beautiful little baby, about 1 or 2 years old, I remember. And we set up our cameras, and I had in those days, little Sony Handycam that I had with me that was new at the time. And sure enough, there's a rumble, and he's going to come, and the door opens, and out walks this beautiful man with long blonde hair and a Japanese robe, and I'm shooting him, and I say good morning, and he was as sharp as a tack. He knew everything. He looked around, he saw the ninjas, and he knew I was filming him. This was, quote, the screen test. But I had brought some Sazic and some Provolone and some Toscano cigars, and I had put these props around. And he came out and he looked at all this, and he figured out what was going on. And he took his hair and he did his hair up. He had very long blonde hair. And he did it up in a kind of thing himself in the back. And he took shoe polish and he made it black, and then he put on a shirt, and I remember him saying, those guys, the lapel has always got a crooked part, you know. And he did that, he made the lapel, and he started to do that. And then he said, you know, he was shot in the throat. In the book, he was shot in the throat. So he talks like that, maybe. And I said, yeah, you know, I'm filming. And then he said, he should look like a bulldog. And he took some Kleenex, and he put the Kleenex, like that. And then he started, like, acting, but not saying anything. And it was in his house. And I'm shooting, and we're all shooting, and he starts going, and the phone rings. His phone rings over here. I don't know who is calling, but he goes, so, at any rate, it was a miraculous transformation. It was the birth of that character. So I figured I was going to play my cards. I wasn't going to show it to the president of Paramount Pictures. I went to New York with the videotape, and I went to the office of Gulf and Western. Charlie Bluthorn was the head of the company, and he was the big boss. And I knocked on his office. I had set up a tape recorder in the conference room near his office. And I said to him, does Mr. Bluthorn have 5 minutes that I could show him something? And he knew me. I mean, Charlie Bluthorn, it was Church of England, but he had a Viennese accent. And he talked like, Francis, what are you doing, you crazy Francis? So he sees me, and he says, oh, what is it? I said, Charlie, could I just show you something? And he comes out, and he looks. I turn on the video thing, and there is this guy with blonde hair. And Charlie Bluthorn said, no, absolutely. That's incredible. And when he said that's incredible, and it was incredible, I knew that if Charlie Bluthorn okayed it, then it would okay. And that's how he got the part. They forgot about the $1 million bond, but they didn't hardly pay him anything. They paid him like $120,000.
The making of The Godfather in 1971 drew several real-life Godfathers out of the shadows. They had some concerns about the script, about the depiction of Italian Americans, and brought pressure on Paramount's corporate head.
Well, Joe Colombo was the famous fellow who walked into Charlie Bluthorn's office and says, we don't want to hear the word mafia mentioned. Cosa Nostra, all those guys. And Charlie Bluthorn said, well, boy, whatever you want, you know, we're glad to serve it up.
So the studio tried to accommodate the Colombos and Buffalinos of the world by including them as extras in the wedding sequence. And it was the shooting of that scene that led to what Brando laughingly describes as the most critical error of his life.
So I was bombed. It was a long day, and it was a dull day, and everybody was drinking, and I really got ripped. I completely snockered, and so I mooned the audience. It was all Mr. Buffalino's family, and I didn't know that at the time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it, naturally. I didn't mean it as an insult. I meant it as a joke, but I was so drunk I couldn't hit the floor with my hat. What's that? Yeah, I do.